Recorded live, coast to coast, it's the Nissan Nation podcast. From camping, racing, and all points in between. The NNP is your Nissan Nation podcast. Now start your engines and welcome in the hosts, David and Danny.
What is going on, Nissan Nation? My name is David Boyd, and I'd like to say alongside me is my co-host Daniel, the Big Deal Groders, but sadly Dan is not with us tonight. We're going to recap this one really quick. We want to get back to the interview that we had started with Greg of NICO Club. If you enjoyed what you heard last week, I think this gets a little better. We start getting into truck talk a little bit. Greg, besides the killer heritage cars he has, he does drive a Nissan Frontier. I think he shares it with his wife from what we were talking about. And he's bragging on it a little bit like you would expect. Talks about pulling and towing, I think, in this. How it outperforms some of the bigger trucks that tow some of their heritage cars at the car shows they do. It's kind of comical. Greg is a super, super nice guy, and we can't say enough for him doing this two-parter interview. We recorded about an hour and a half of this, and I think pretty much you're getting everything that we had talked about, and we cannot wait to have Greg back again. I mean, the guy is full of just knowledge within the car industry. He loves Nissan and he loves talking Nissan, as you've probably heard with the last episode. Let me get to a couple news little blurps here. Where's old JR when we need him? Nissan donates $500,000 to support Mississippi's History and Civil Rights Museum. This is always a big thing. They seem to really give back to the communities they're in. And of course, the truck plant, and they do some Ultima stuff down in Canton, Mississippi. They're doing the van, Xterra, Frontier, Titan. I think they're doing Murano a little bit there too. Anyways, that is always great when they're giving back to their community. I know here in Middle Tennessee, they've really done a lot for the community. I think when they opened the plant in '84, it was very, very little, jobs related to the car manufacturing. Now it's 1 in 3 people work somehow within that industry. And of course, we have VW in Chattanooga too, so that probably helps those numbers slightly. But so it's good to see them giving back. What else do we have here? We got some racing news. We're itching to bring some of this stuff to interviews to you guys as well. James Davison takes the Nissan's first win at the Pirelli World Challenge at Barber Motorsports. This is cool. It's a GTR program that they're really getting into this. I think they're calling it the Nismo GT3. They did a flag-to-flag victory for at the Barber Motorsports Park circuit near Birmingham Saturday. Obviously, I'm just reading this if you can't tell. It's cool to see them getting into more and more racing. Obviously, the GTR is a beast. I mean, they don't call it Godzilla for nothing. So it's glad to see them kind of kicking back in there. What else do we got here? The Nissan Versa Note was named one of the 10 tech savviest cars for under $20,000 by Kelley Blue Book, KBB.com. For the second straight year, the Nissan Versa Note is one of Kelley Blue Book's 10 savviest cars under $20,000, awarded for its excellent all-around view monitoring system and just tech options. Hands-free texting, Bluetooth, Pandora capability. The 2015 Versa Note finished 6th on the list. What a great little car for really, I think you can get one for about $15,000. Fairly nice little car. You're going to get 40 miles a gallon. So that's always nice to see our favorite brand being acknowledged. What else have we got here, Nissan? You sneaky guys. Let's check out your news page. We got some Nismo University testing. We'll get into that. Let's see. The head of Nissan wants to talk about autonomous driving cars. I cannot wait to get into this with Dan Amigo. I'm sure Dan has some great ideas on sitting back and letting the car do all the work, literally all by itself. I did read that for March the brand is down in sales. They've been boosting, so it's not unlikely that you would have a down month. The U.S. was still up like 1.5%, something like that. So it's nothing to worry about. They've got, with Titan launching, Maxima launching, you're going to have some spikes in this, and it's really going to come up for Nissan North America. What else? Anything else? I don't see anything else. Let's do this, guys. Let's get back to our interview. And once again, we are on Facebook under Nissan Nation Podcast. Give us a shout out and give us your feedback. We love feedback. We want to shape this show to what you want it to be. We're also on NissanNationPodcast.com. We try to keep a couple little blurbs of news of what we're talking about, maybe some links to the guests that we're talking about there as well. We're also going to post up on our Facebook page the Adam Carolla documentary he did on Paul Newman called Winning. We promised that in the last episode, and it should be up by the time this one airs. It should be up and rolling. Once again, here we go. This is Mr. Greg with NICO Club. Pardon me. Let's get it on.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, America.
We like our big motors, and we like our horsepower, and you know we're keeping an eye now. I mean, I'm eager to see what happens. The product planner for the Titan is a friend, and I've gotten to know the product planners at Nissan over the years and participating in their corporate events and stuff, and spent some time with the product planner for the new Titan platform, and the jury's out on that. I'm very eager to see what happens with it. We own a Frontier. It's the best vehicle we've ever owned, period, bar none.
Yep.
And I've got my pretty wife to thank for that, because she was the one that actually bought it. I'm a huge Xterra fan. So when it goes away, I'll be real sad. I think it's the perfect crossover or SUV, whatever you want to call it.
Speaking
I'm
of,
curious to see what happens with the Titan.
Speaking of Xterra, it's a very interesting vehicle, and that's probably what drew me to it. And their original slogan of everything you need, nothing you don't, really hit home with people. And the second generation, and I own both of them, and I love the second generation for the creature comforts it have. But for some reason, why do these auto manufacturers think when you've got a home run? And the Xterra was changed very rapidly, I think, because Frontier had been out for several years and it was the same platform. But why do they instantly go bigger every time? You've got a vehicle that works. I see it. Look at Ultimo. Look at the first. Yeah,
Daniel's right on. Here, go.
I got this. I got this guy.
Dig back. Yeah, Daniel's got the answer. Dig back into your history. Go back. I'll take you guys back a little bit. Go back to the early '80s. Go back to the late '70s and look at how big was a Honda Accord.
Right.
It was smaller than a modern Mini Cooper. You fast forward 10 years. The Accord, fast forward even more than that. What's an Accord look like? It's a big car. What was the Civic back in the early 80s, late 70s? It was a micro car by today's standards. So they all pull forward. They all get bigger. That's happened with the Sentra. I would hazard a guess that if you see a B17 chassis Sentra on the road right now, good luck telling it from an Altima, or from a distance, it could be a Maxima. Right. So, and it's a great car. I'm a big fan. I got to attend the unveiling of it out in Dallas when they released it to the market, and I was like, man, you can get that car for, and I don't remember what the sticker price was, but I thought that's a lot of car for the money. It checked all the boxes. It doesn't check the enthusiast boxes, but we're a small demographic, so.
And kind of what I was getting to with this, the rumor is the Xterra is no longer, and that's been floating for years, and it's kind of been writing on the wall, especially with the next Frontier due to launch next year. But I found it interesting. All of a sudden, Toyota has there's ads everywhere now for the 4Runner, and it's the 4Runner playing in the dirt with the guy out in the wilderness with it. And I've yet to figure out how Nissan is so one-sided with the Altima and the Maxima and stuff. And I know that's their bread and butter. But if you don't advertise the vehicle every once in a while, you're never going to sell any. And even with the Titan,
it's painful.
It's rarely, the Titan, when it first came out, that was going to be a home run, man. That motor had more power than any American-made truck. The styling was more aggressive than any American-made truck, and it had everything. And it's like they dumped it out to the world and then just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, the market share on that truck was really small, and they were okay with that. It was something to keep brand awareness up. If you look at, and I lost my train of thought there, but go ahead. I'm sorry, you were talking about the
Xterra.
I think that's a lot of what happens, especially with. I mean, when you're dealing with. I mean, we're kind of crazy off topic here, but when you're dealing with large auto manufacturers, I mean, people like Ford who sell. I mean, the amount of F-150s that they sell absolutely is mind-boggling. If you Google, I tell everybody to go Google the Ford F-150 sales and then compare it to every other automotive sale. For the year, and it will blow your mind. But when it comes to large trucks, and you look at the sales, I think you hit the nail on the head. And with keeping the brand name out, and at least having a presence in that market. So you may be able to. I mean, it keeps the door open to move into that market. The Frontier started selling out outselling the Tacoma a little bit. So I think they're starting to realize that they can get their foot in the door, as when some of these bigger guys kind of pulled out or whatnot. They're saying, okay, maybe we can get the Ranger's gone, we'll get our foot. We've been a pretty solid presence. Now we're starting to be able to move into that market. So I mean, you can't hate on the decisions. I mean, the SUV market has kind of taken a weird turn with all the loss of all the body on frame vehicles. Jeep still plugging for that rugged vehicle where it's it's a unibody with all the I don't even know what Jeep's doing.
The KL.
It's dirty little stepchildren that are running out in the dirt now.
But Dan, for Jeep, they have to make those now because these silly regulations is their bread and butter is the Wrangler, and they're never going to say otherwise. But to keep the Wrangler around, you got to have a dozen of those little turd things that get 30 miles a gallon, and I think that's what
you've got to sell a whole bunch of Compasses, and you've got to sell a whole lot of. God, I don't even know what the other Patriot or whatever they are.
Let me interject that I had a Compass rental for 3 days. Well, my Frontier was getting worked on, and I apologize for anybody that has a Compass, but I will say hands down that is the worst car I have ever driven, and I've driven some dump cars.
You've never driven a Dodge Aspen, then?
It's probably on par. There was nothing that works.
It's about a 90 horsepower minivan. Yeah, so
it sounds about like a Compass.
Yeah, so that speaking of that, and to get it back around to the back into our wheelhouse, the stuff we know. I mean, David, we watched we were front row spectators when the Pathfinder, which I'm a huge Pathfinder fan. I owned a 97, and I thought it was just an amazingly competent vehicle. Mm-hmm. Just absolutely loved it. And we watched that vehicle hit its heyday and really it spawned off the QX4, which was to me was a beautiful SUV, and looked right at home wherever it went. So, and then we get the Mall Finder, and honestly, here's the deal. What happened there, and I'll stick to my guns on this one. There's not a thing wrong with the vehicle. As a matter of fact, Becky and I got a chance to drive one when they first came out, and we did a pretty extensive.
Agreed.
It's phenomenal, and I would say it's probably the best in its class at what it does. I would own one in a heartbeat. It's a good-looking car. It does everything right. It checks all the boxes. They just misnamed it, and that was the issue. They didn't, like you said, they didn't need 3 crossover / SUV vehicles. They just misnamed it. If they would have called it anything else, we wouldn't have had the backlash that we had, I don't think.
You're talking about the latest Pathfinder, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. Well, the worst part is that's a $1 billion name to any company, and
Sure.
you've got a brand recognition with that name. But yeah, I agree.
And that's exactly what they were gunning for, was they didn't want to lose the brand recognition, the name recognition. And I get that. I mean, that was that's a bean counter decision,
Sure.
and probably the smart decision. But
I think
from an enthusiast standpoint, it was just, boy,
Sad.
the only thing you could have done that was stupider was cut the top off of a Murano.
Well, I think their biggest mistake,
Right.
the biggest mistake with that vehicle is showing them towing campers and stuff with that CVT.
Yeah, showing it running up a mountain and chasing the crazy old guy up the mountain or whatever it is in the commercial. But hugely competent vehicle, and it's fantastic for what it does. Becky and I were both fans of it.
But once again, here you got to look at it. It's slightly larger than the Murano, and anymore is we're counting pennies in between each vehicle. It used to be you had price points of several $1,000s in between stepping it up to the next vehicle. Well, there's a price point where the JX35 or whatever they're calling it now, the Q60 something. There's a price point where the Pathfinder is more expensive than that vehicle, and it's the exact same vehicle.
Sure.
Now, working for Nissan at the Smyrna plant, and I've seen the development of that and how the trials and stuff, I will say that, and I never believe this with Cadillac or anybody, but they do take those brands like your Infinities, and they're more detailed with the build of those vehicles. And I watched it down to the center console of these vehicles. I watched them build next to the part I was on the line. They built a separate line just for the center console. And it took them probably 3 months to get the line right, and it was somewhat automated. But it tripped me out. And of course the Pathfinder doesn't get that same luxury.
Sure.
But it trips me out that there's a Pathfinder that's more expensive than your prestige brand. And
yeah, and I think I think you'll see that across the board. I mean, you can look at, and this is true for any manufacturer, I think. But you can go buy, like I said, a B17 Sentra that's got more goodies on it than the Altima, at a lower price point. So you can buy a base Altima or you can buy a loaded out Sentra, and the same thing happened between the Altima and the Maxima. Why would you buy a Maxima when you can buy a 3.5 liter Altima that's got more this, more that, more this, more that? So there's quite a bit of overlap there, and I think that's by design. We don't. It's hard for us as kind of being in between lay people and car guys. It's hard for us to comprehend why they do it. But they really do. Once they get somebody in the showroom, you can't say, well, I want this, and they don't have something for you.
Sure. But
so it covers the gamut.
I think Nissan learned their lesson with keeping the cars a little too similar with the Altima, that mid 2000 Altima and the Maxima. I think they learned pretty quick that when you really cannot tell that vehicle apart. And the new brand
really cannibalized sales,
right? And the new branding, it's somewhat genius of trying to call the Maxima a 4-door sports car. But on to kind of that, have you had a chance to personally see the new Maxima yet?
I have, and I'll say this, and I typically go out on a limb with this stuff. It's beautiful in person.
Yes. Pictures don't do it justice.
The thing, all we get when we, as car guys, we get pictures, and that's the first thing we think is the styling. We see the styling. Is it a good car? Is it a bad car? Really, all we know is the styling. And as your tastes mature, I guess, you realize that the exterior isn't what it's all about. But it's a really handsome car. I think they hit it out of the park. I know the product planner for that vehicle as well, and I think they've hit a home run. When I did the Nissan 360 event out in California year before last, they had the previous generation Maxima. They had a thing set up where press people could drive pretty much anything Nissan builds, whether it be for the U.S. market or the global market. And
right.
So we got to see cars that nobody's ever seen before in the U.S. And I spent some time with the current Maxima, and as much as I gripe about front wheel drive and CVTs, I had a hoot driving that thing. It was a blast, and I could see myself driving one every day. If the new one is that much better, they've got a hit on their hands. But again, you got to look at hopefully they keep the price point reasonable. My suspicion is it's going to be an expensive car.
Sure. And I got to take a ride in one a couple of weeks ago, and I will say, I own an Infiniti G35, and the thing, it felt so much faster than my G35. It was ridiculous. You hit it into the sports tuning they've got, and you can't tell that it's a CVT anymore. They
play with the algorithms, and they play with the programming for those things. And that was one of the big gripes, if you remember driving the early CVTs.
Sure.
It would go to a constant RPM and just sit there, and it felt like the clutch was slipping on a,
Yeah. You lose
nowadays
that driver feel.
Nowadays they've got the the shift points, and I say that in quotes because there's it doesn't shift, but
the rubber band points.
they've got it programmed to where it actually is indistinguishable from a 7 or an 8 speed automatic, and it's just progress, and they're not going away. From an engineering standpoint, it makes sense.
Sure, there's a lot less friction with that transmission.
Sure, and like Daniel said, they're going to hit their fuel economy numbers. They're going to have to sell a whole crap ton of Versas and Notes and even the 2.5 Altimas and things of that nature, so that they can build the Maxima and sell those with the 3.5 liter or Titans or God forbid, the Frontier and the Xterra with their dismal fuel economy. So if they sell 100 Notes, then that frees them up to sell a whole bunch of Frontiers.
Were you surprised that they didn't put the 3.7 in this next Maxima?
Originally, I was under the impression, and what we all thought, those of us who thought we were insiders, and Nissan never ceases to amaze me with how they throw us off. I actually expected it to get the 3.8.
Really?
Naturally aspirated 3.8. The architecture was there for it. The infrastructure was already in place. That could have been a 325 horsepower BMW fighter. And that's what we were hoping, that we would see, a detuned 3.8 with maybe a 6-speed or maybe a sequential like the GTR.
Well, I know they have learned on this 3.5. They are using some of the GTR stuff now with it, as far as the exhaust dampening and a few things. I'm not very technical with it, but I know this engine has benefited from the GTR.
Sure.
And I was told by an insider at the plant that they are going to get 30 miles a gallon, combined out of this thing, which is a huge jump up compared to the 24 of the last one.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's a major.
And the trickle down, you get to see the trickle down. I mean, you get to see things that were, previously, you go back to the early GTRs or the early 350Z or the 370Zs, and you see some of that technology and those cool bits trickle down to more pedestrian model vehicles, and that's just progress. And the Halo vehicles really do, the rising tide lifts all ships, and it really does benefit the entire lineup.
All right.
Yeah.
Where do you think? Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave. Okay, I wanted to shift gears a little bit, if you're okay with that, Dave. Unless you had some serious questions.
It was going to be a truck question next, man.
Oh, he doesn't want to hear about that.
Nah,
So I had a question. All right, I think I went through a while back. I went through, and I want to say it was on Nico Club or something, that it was like all of your cars that you have had or restored or whatnot, or over your kind of your Nico career. I can't remember all of them. I remember most of them were super awesome, and they got me Skyping or not Skyping, but Googling all different cars that I never knew existed. But this leads me to the question: what? And it's a totally loaded question because there's no way you're going to answer it correctly. What is your favorite Nissan car?
Or Datsun?
That's totally simple. And I don't own it. I'm a big fan of the. I'm a big fan of the classics. I mean, you guys have seen our fleet.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
My passion is for the early Datsuns and going back to the stuff that came over in the early '60s. But my all-time favorite car, and I'm probably going to bump up the value of them, a couple $1,000s, is the chassis is a CSP 311, so the '65 Silvia. Just a phenomenally beautiful car, just perfectly proportioned, just a gorgeous styling design, built on the Roadster chassis. It was Nissan's foray into it was actually a hand-built car, and it would have been the equivalent back then. It would have been the equivalent of, say buying an upper end Infinity. So it was their boutique car, I guess, is the best way to describe it, or just something really special, limited production. And so that's my favorite. And at some point, hopefully, God willing, I'll own one, but
Nice.
they're few and far between. But from a more realistic standpoint, as far as what we have, I think I mentioned it before. Man, I'll tell you, you can't beat that Frontier. We've got an '05 crew cab, 4-wheel drive, and it's our hauler. It takes our cars to shows. We've got, what do we have? 130,000 on it now. 132, Becky says.
Nice.
She just got out of it, and it's it still looks relevant. It doesn't look old. It still turns heads. The VQ40 is in my opinion one of Nissan's best motors.
Right.
It absolutely hauls butt.
It's like a small block Chevy engine, really. And
people are really amazed at what that thing will tow. And at the time, Toyota just couldn't hang. And it's not a brand loyalty thing. It's they weren't building a truck that could do what that truck could do.
Sure.
So I think it's very underappreciated in the enthusiast community. I think truck guys look at it and they think, oh, that's another Jap truck that can't perform.
Well, it almost
that thing through the ringer,
and it still almost outperforms the brand new Colorado. I was amazed at when the Colorado came out. Some of the guys were putting the Frontier and the Tacoma and stuff up against the new Colorado, and they're like, "Oh, look how much better this thing performs!" And you're like, "Guys, these are 10-year-old designs."
10
Actually,
years
12,
old, guys.
12 or so now. And
if that's as far as you've come, you haven't been doing your homework.
Right. And what's funny was I was checking the numbers that they sold last month, and Nissan still outsold the Colorado last month.
They can't keep them on the lots, and it's amazing. I mean, those of us that own them, we look at our fuel gauge drop like a rock, and but you know what? That's not why you buy a truck,
right?
And Ford is learning a lesson with this EcoBoost experiment. That's not going to work for them.
No.
And
have you had a chance to ride in the little EcoBoost Mustang yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, it's I've set it up against my G35. A buddy just bought one, and he's within the Xterra community, and he wanted to run them a little bit. And the first two shifts he could keep up with me. But then the power band just dropped. That little turbo didn't want to keep up with it.
Think about when you take a test drive. Think about test driving.
Mm-hmm.
What sells the car?
Oh, the
throttle tip in and that first gear.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
people don't typically
throttle for a second, feel it drop, and get that little push in the seat, right? Well, that was cool. You never slam it, take it in.
Here comes Megatron Dan. There's Megatron Dan with us tonight.
Yeah, it was. Wow.
So we'll talk. And I hate to keep this interviews going longer than they normally do, and we'll probably break this up into 2 parts. But you're such an interesting guy to talk to. I want to talk truck for a minute because I mean there's 100 cars we could talk all day long. And me and Dan, our background is really into the trucks, and we're trying to play catch up with some of the cars, and we really want to service that with the podcast. And we'd love to have you back more to talk cars. But with New Titan, okay. This one has to be a home run out of the park for their sales, and I'm not going to say a home run by GM or Ford standards, but they're going to have to pick up some market share. This 1% or whatever they're hanging on with the current Titan's not going to do it. What I know people have bashed this thing for looking like Dodge or Ford. And I don't think any of these car companies have some insider copying designs. You know, I think it was by chance.
No.
You're really getting limited with, you've got a big boxy front end. So you're starting to get limited with what you can do with them.
Well, it's even more than that. And I'm sorry, David, it's even more than that. If you look at NHTSA regulations for a vehicle of that size, you know, you've got to have X amount of forward-facing surface area dedicated to headlights. You've got to have X amount of surface area for turn signals. You've got, you know, the engineers, the guys that are doing the power plant, they want X amount of airflow through the grill, things of this nature. So you've got, I mean, here, look at the difference. Look at what pedestrian safety standards did to vehicles. You went, I'm wanting to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you had a lot of cars that were where the bonnet or the hood was getting lower and lower and lower and more slow stopped. So you got all these blunt front end cars, you know, the Challenger look and the Mustang look and even the Maxima, you know, became blunt in the front. Those are direct results of the pedestrian safety standards. So they're so hamstrung design. I'm amazed that everything doesn't look identical, honestly.
Sure.
For companies to be able to turn out something that's even remotely unique, you know, it's a real testament to their creativity. When you get into the trucks, and like you said, and like Daniel mentioned, they're really hamstrung. I mean, it's almost like, you know, what kind of a meal can you make out of a piece of bread and a jar of peanut butter?
Yeah.
It's kind of that NASCAR. It's kind of that
peanut butter
NASCAR
sandwich.
It's kind of that NASCAR deal now, you know, where it's you have an outline of a vehicle that you can make, and if you can change the grill slightly, you can call it your own.
And on a truck, you know, if you think about it, the sides of a truck, you can't do much with them. They're going to be straight up and down. You can't get too crazy with them. We saw what happened with Toyota when they went to the funky shaped fender wells and, you know, all that gingerbread crap that they bolted onto them to make them look macho. And then you look at the statistics on them, or the performance, or, you know, the approach angle, the departure angle, things that truck guys care about. And it wasn't an off-road vehicle. It just had all this plastic, you know, stuff on it that made it look macho. So the sides you can't do a whole lot with. So with trucks, you've got your front fascia, and to a lesser degree your tailgate area. If you can't, as a designer, if you can't make a statement there, you really don't have a whole lot of canvas to work with. So it would be arrogant to think that, you know, with Ford's history of cranking out F-150s and that being just an awesome truck and holding almost all of the market share, it would be arrogant to think that building a great truck, it's not going to look a lot like an F-150. So
sure. Yeah, agreed.
And in some ways, you have to copy the guy that's leading the pack. And I guess that's what bothers me is, you know, you see the good old boys, your Ford, Chevy, GM guy, and they instantly could not wait to bash this poor vehicle without ever seeing the numbers on it, And on the inside, the thing is gorgeous on the inside. I'm iffy on the outside because I was really a fan of the last Titan. I still think the last Titan looks the best out of any current vehicle, full size truck. The design holds up. The just fuel economy killed the thing. But what with Cummins coming along? I mean that really gives this truck instant credibility more than just saying, hey, we built a V8 that's a badass V8. We've had some questions posted on our Facebook page. What do you think that thing's going to cost? And here this is the scary thing to me, because diesel is $4,000 to $6,000 no matter what added to the cost. And you're getting into a $40,000 truck anymore without even adding the diesel to it. Where do you kind of see the pricing future on this vehicle?
Trucks in general. I mean, let's not make it about Nissan, because they've got to be competitive in the market. Sure. The days of going out. I mean, I remember when the Titan came out. My thing was, let's get a two-door Titan, two-wheel drive work truck with nothing on it, and drop it to the ground on some wide tires, and with that VK56, let's just go to the drag strip and mop some cars. Those days are gone. They're not building those because they don't make money, and people aren't going to do a fleet of Titans. Let's just call it what it is. They're going to buy a GM. They're going to buy Ford. They're going to buy Dodge, or Ram, I guess it is. So, trucks in general. I mean, for crying out loud, I fell in love with my wife and I both. We fell in love with the GMC Sierra, the new one. It's just an absolutely stunning truck. We were checking them out at Barrett Jackson last year. Love to own one, but I'll tell you what, you're talking about the one in the commercial's $57,000.
Right.
So, am I going to go? I'm out here in the desert in Phoenix. Am I going to go bomb through the desert in a $57,000 truck? No, it's not happening. So, I don't see Nissan being any different than any other manufacturer when it comes to that. And you're right, David, that, once you get into that thing and you throw navigation and leather and a Cummins turbo diesel under the hood, it's going to have to be priced competitively. So I would say your best guess is go on Chevrolet.com or go on Ford.com and build those vehicles with the same specs and throw the diesel engine in it, and there's your Titan price.
Right.
I don't see how it can be that much different. They may come in a couple $1,000s less to make a nick in the market, but I don't see how you can do it.
And in some ways, I don't think they can. I almost think they're going to have to come in at the same price point because GM and Ford, they've all gotten smart and started building their own diesels, and they kind of got a little heritage with their own stuff now. And
with in-house,
right?
In-house.
And Cummins is going to put there's a price on that engine, and I don't think many people realize this engine, it just comes from Cummins. That's it. They're doing that, and I think the powertrain of it, they've tuned with it a little bit. But as far as they're not getting a deal on this engine. It's not Cummins. Hey, we want to be back in that market, So they're paying full.
I'm pretty sure Ram didn't do them any favors either. I'm pretty sure Ram was not happy about it. So
that was the problem with the buyout with Fiat. They had their own diesel they want to use, and many people don't know this, and I've talked about it on the podcast a couple times. That engine's been ready to go in a vehicle since 2009. They built a plant specifically for this engine, and when Dodge was going to start building the next Titan, that was going to be in the Dodge and in the Nissan, and just with that.
For the people that have stuck with us this long on the podcast, I'm going to go out on a limb and say something that might get my ass kicked. Here, I'll just throw this out there. I believe.
Wait. Hold on. We'll be right back after these commercial break.
Yeah.
There you go. Go ahead.
Here's your commercial.
Go ahead.
I suspect, and I don't have anything to base this off of, guys. So this is just a gut thing of watching this company for a long time. I'm on board come hell or high water. I believe that how to say this. I believe that this is a stopgap measure. That and I may be way wrong on this, but I believe that this doing the Cummins engine in that truck is a stopgap measure. It's a temporary solution, and I'll give you one word: keep an eye on it. And we can talk about it on the next podcast when something comes of it, or if anything comes of it. Mercedes,
right? And the reports are out that I read something today that Mercedes is wanting to build a full size vehicle, and here's Nissan, and they have a great relationship anymore.
Well, we have the truck. I mean, we've got the truck. It's it's happening.
I think the thing that's Mercedes wants to put their own underpinning under it, not the framing, but they want their own smooth riding vehicle. Yeah. Yep. And in the next frontier, they're gonna build off in Europe. They're gonna build a Mercedes small truck off of it. And sadly, I think our government's kind of effed us on this one. Of not that I want Mercedes building more cars here or having more cars here, but the crappy restrictions we have on vehicles now is keeping some of these game changers away. And
sure.
And Nissan's they'll benefit from the technology. They're already going to share a platform in their next small SUV with Infiniti. Mm-hmm. And the small diesel, they're going to. I think it's the design is Mercedes. It's just going to be built in the plant here in Tennessee.
Yeah. So I think, like I said, I think the Cummins thing is a stopgap measure. I think, like you said, that thing was ready almost 7 here in car years. That's 7 years ago.
Yeah, that's a generation of a vehicle.
It was ready then, and I think it was just one of those, it was kind of like they did with the M45 back in 03 and 04. It was, we don't have a vehicle to fit this niche. Let's go grab the one that we build for the Japanese market.
Right.
Let's go ahead and sell it in the U.S. for a year and a half to get us through until we're done with, the new design or the new platform, which was also a global platform. I think it's a stopgap measure, and I could be way wrong. And if I am, I'll come back on here and say, "See, I told you so. I told you I was wrong." But I think that's what it is. So I wouldn't get too terribly excited about it. Again, talking with the product planner for that vehicle, and the former product planner for the last generation Titan. That's what that leads me to believe.
Did you get to? I'm assuming you saw it. Did you see the rollout of it at the Detroit Auto Show?
I did.
You know what I think they really missed the mark on was letting Gozen, or however you pronounce his name, roll that vehicle out. It's you're preaching to an American buyer. The last thing you want is some guy, and I'm not trying to be mean here, but he doesn't speak English very well. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, sure. But you've got, who did you just bring over from Dodge or Ram, whatever you want to call him? You just brought their head of their trucking, Fred Diaz or whatever his name is.
Yeah. And I've actually met him and spent some time with him.
You just brought this guy to talk about trucks, and what do? You let, and maybe it's ego, I don't know, but let the American truck buyer hear an American guy.
So you had the French guy pop out, and I'll tell you, he's an impressive dude. If you haven't read the book about him, read it. It's and I'm sure you guys have. Ghosn is a amazing individual. Fred, I got to spend a little bit of time with him at one of the events, and you're totally right. That guy, he's a guy's guy, and you can see him up across the parking lot and know he's a truck guy.
Sure.
Super cool dude. And yeah, I don't know what the thinking there was on that. And I think, it's one of those things that we can armchair quarterback to death, but yeah, it's, I think even more so than that, when they rolled it out, I don't know what they were thinking with the one base model that they brought out, but why did we even need to see that?
Right. I'm not sure
what the thinking was.
And everything I've heard is the gas version, the front end is going to be slightly different than obviously the diesel version.
Sure.
And I don't know why you're teasing us with this diesel, which every guy on every car forum has said diesel for years and years, and most of those guys are never going to pay for it. But why do you tease us with with this diesel, and that's not your bread and butter. I mean, you're going to make money with it.
Dave, I think what it really comes down to, and Greg, well, I know you're in the know. I'm not sure if you know that I'm kind of a big deal, so I am also in the know. So, and normally I wouldn't bring this up, but I'm really connected politically in the Soviet Union, and I didn't. This is
if
kind
you
of
tell me that
hush-hush.
you tell me that Putin has an order in for a new diesel Titan, I'm turning this whole thing off. 'Cause I'm pretty sure you're full of crap.
The Xterra, and you heard it here first. I can't go on in this show without letting this go, because I mean, you're a big deal here, on the show, and I wanted to announce at first that the Nissan Xterra will now be replaced by the Russian Lada, which is a beautiful little car that they're building, and it's going to have a Cummins diesel in it, a 750 horsepower Cummins diesel, and you heard it first here. And because they're really mixing things up, and
I think you're
Russia
mixing
is
things
really
up, Dan.
starting to take over in this
I would
part
like
of the
everybody
market.
to take note of Daniel's name and how it's spelled, and make sure that you don't get the two of us confused.
It is the
That's
X
awesome.
Lada. It's going to be called the X Lada.
It's a lot of-
So, where do you think the 4.0 is going to stay with the next little truck, or do you think they're going to? I mean, obviously the horsepower has to bump up. That's just the laws of the land. I mean, they're going to have to hit over 300 horsepower. But do you think it's the same 4.0 with what they're talking about doing, some variable fuel injection or something like that?
Boy, that's a tough question, David. I think here's the deal. I'm a big fan of that motor, and if you think about it, okay, so it was, I don't know what it is now. I'm not as up on it.
262 is where we're at right now with horsepower.
Okay, so it hasn't changed much in a decade. So there's not a lot more. It's not putting out a lot more than it did back in 05, and that's okay. But by the same token, it's kind of like the VQ35 was for years. I mean, that thing is in everything. That engine is in everything because it's just a good motor.
Right.
There's a lot of room to work with, and we talked about trickle down earlier. There's a lot of room for, okay, what if you take that engine, and what if you, Nissan's big plan was lighter weight, less friction, and less rotating mass. And so you apply all of those things to that engine and that platform, and say you pull a Ford and you make some of the panels out of aluminum or composite, and
Please
say
God,
you reduce drivetrain losses through friction, and say they go in and reduce rotating mass, and then they direct inject it. I don't know that you need you don't need to reinvent the wheel. That motor is easily capable of 300 horsepower because we've got guys doing it on the forums.
Sure.
So, so I think it's got some longevity, and again, I could be just, pulling stuff out of my butt here, but I think I don't see them ramping up production of something new when they haven't even wrung out everything that motor will give them yet.
Right. And I don't.
It's a great platform to pull some horse and put some new stuff in. Like I like your hypothesis of direct inject. I mean, that's a simple, easy way for them to do a little bit more machining and bring in something that's it's direct inject is fairly new to the market per se. I guess you could. I mean, I was a BMW mechanic when they first started direct inject in their twin turbo. They had tons of problems right off the bat, but you could tell that they were slowly kind of getting it squared away, and BMW is always bringing in new wacky stuff and over engineering. But it's it's pretty common now, especially with diesels. They've had it for a while, but it's pretty common now.
The Koreans are doing it. We've got a rental car sitting out here for my daughter, and it's direct injected. It's a Kia, for crying out loud. So so if they can get it nailed down, I don't see any reason why that couldn't be applied to any of the engines we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And it would be a simple remachine production line thing that you could do, and slap some new injectors and redesign your combustion chamber explosions.
And I think it's going to have to be that way because they're talking about putting this 3.40 in the next Titan. So I mean, they're going to have all the big boys are hitting 305, 310 in their little V6s, so they're going to have to play that ball game.
There's really no reason not to, and I'll tell you, we've got a funny little story about taking the cars out to JCCS out in California last year, and I always recruit my buddies. Everybody gets a truck, everybody gets a trailer, and we haul the cars out there for the car show to Southern California. And one of our tow vehicles was a what does Tyler got, a F250, F350 turbo diesel, and I'm sure that thing can pull a house down, but I'll be damned if he could keep up with the Frontier. We were towing, similarly weighted vehicles, and we were going up through, what is it, Palm Springs, I guess, where that long stretch.
Oh yeah, that grade.
It's like a 7% upgrade. Uphill grade up through where the windmills are. And I'll tell you, we're running along at 1 a.m. because we like to run at night, and it's cooler and it's easier on the vehicles, and we can do the posted speed limit. And
you hear that, California? You hear that, Chips?
And I'll tell you, we left the rest stop, and I just because the truck has it in it, then I drive it to its capacity, and with a 2,600 pound car on the trailer, an 18-foot, almost 20-foot trailer, with all my gear for the weekend, 90 miles an hour up the hill wasn't a big deal. Now, here's the difference. That's all about the transmission.
Right. So
it's a 6-speed, and the guys, even with the automatics, aren't getting that kind of performance. But, we stopped at the next stop, and now granted, I went through a tank of gas real damn fast. But at the next stop, he was like, he's like, there's no way I was catching you. I was a mile ahead of him by the time we were done with that grade.
Wow.
So, I'm not as enamored with the diesel thing as some are, and it obviously has its place. But yeah, to answer your question again, I think that I'm a big fan of that engine, and I think. Are we going to see a CVT in the trucks? I don't know. At some point, there's no reason not to. So, that's just progress, and we're all going to hate it when it happens. But I think it's still got some longevity left in it. I think it's still got some life left.
Sure. And keeping with this diesel theme, and we'll try to wrap this up. Do you foresee the next, they're calling the MP300 overseas. I mean, that is, for all intents and purposes, that's the next frontier here. I mean, it's no secret. Things I've heard, they'll change the grill slightly, but that's about it. Do you see, they toyed with that concept of having the Cummins 4-cylinder and that thing. Do you see that as a future?
No, and again, I may be way off here. I think if you're going to see something, if you're going to see some mashup on that, I think that's where you're going to see Mercedes get involved. I mean, you've already seen Mercedes wants a truck, and it just makes sense. That's a platform that they could do globally. They're already selling that truck in, every market. I mean, ridiculous places that I didn't even think they had roads. And they're selling that truck everywhere.
Right. It's amazing. They don't have roads, but yet they can buy a brand new car.
It was really funny. And just to go quickly off topic, I got it's neat because the D21, and even going back to the D40 and the D21 platform, that's still being built.
Sure.
You've heard the stories about the VW Beetle being built in Mexico up until a few years ago. That D21 is still being built, and I got a chance to drive one, and I think it was for the South Africa market when I went to the 360 event. And I may be getting this wrong because I drove a ton of vehicles, but it was funny. You're looking at a base model D21 pickup with if I remember correctly, I think it was still a 4-speed, believe it or not.
Wow.
Floor shifter, rubber floor mats, no carpet. and they didn't even update the bed to the bed that the hardbody got. It still had the 720 bed.
Yeah, with the lip around it,
with the bed hooks.
Yeah.
And the old 720 tailgate. So, you know,
like a workhorse.
That tells you something, and what that tells you is that if something works, they're going to keep using it. And you know, we're pretty spoiled here. We get stuff. You know, if something's not redesigned, I mean, look at the Titan. You know, the same thing since 2003. You know, people pretty much gave up and said, you know, that maybe they're never going to redesign it. That's incredibly long for any vehicle, much less a truck, to go without some sort of facelift. So if anybody can do it, you know, I'll say this: if anybody can pull it off, Nissan can. And I think with some of their partnerships, I don't think it's going to be a challenge for them at all. And I think the resultant product is going to be, you know, might not be what we're clamoring for, but I think it's going to be awesome regardless.
Sure. And you know, talking about longevity, if Ford doesn't change the F-150 every 2 years, something's wrong. So
sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
get
it's a profitable truck, and they're good at what they do. I mean, if you know, you'd be hard pressed to not buy one if that's what you needed. But you know, if you wanted to keep it in the family, then I think they'll be okay. And granted, like you said, I think you know, they may never crack 10% market share, but you know, I don't think it'll be a bad product if the Xterra and the Pathfinder and the Frontier are any indicator. You know, Nissan does know how to build a good truck. That's not up for question.
Sure.
And so I have faith that they'll do something really cool, and it'll find its niche, and we'll be there. You know, you guys will be there to take care of the people that buy them, and so will we. And you know, and we'll bring them into the fold and embrace them. And
that's right. Such synergy here, man. I love it.
That's what we do.
Well, guys, we could go on and on for hours and hours. I think we all three here love this brand so much that we could just keep going and going. And I feel like we've only kind of scratched the surface here. So maybe we can bring you back in a few episodes and do some more chatting. But for those that don't know, and I don't know how you would if you're listening to this, NICO Club. Greg, I guess, has run it for, 12 years or so?
Yeah, we're going on longer than that. I'm not going to count because then it shows my age.
Don't count the gray hairs from it, right?
That's right.
So be sure, if all things Nissan, be sure to check them out. All things probably Infiniti as well. Just keep away from the trucks. Just if you got a truck question, keep away from them. And
I think it's time for us to build a truck, Becky.
But
next build thread.
Hey, I could sell you some parts. We'll make money off them, Dave. Don't worry, we'll get them.
Okay.
One way or the other, I'm getting stuck on this one way or the other, aren't I?
But
so you got a Facebook page, NICOClub.com. And then NICOClub.com obviously is your main, kind of like the main hub to, if you want to find anything for Nissan Forum related, that's the place to go. I mean,
what's your favorite social?
If you got a Nissan, you could find a club for yourself.
What's your favorite social network that you're connecting with
oh boy, people? You know, so here's the deal. And I'll tell you guys, like I tell people when I do my presentations, forums are the original social media.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We were doing this stuff long before these kids, got excited about Facebook. We've tried to get in, we're involved in all of them, but I'll tell you, nothing beats the community of a forum. And quick plug here for people are going to find the podcast via Facebook. People are going to go to the forums because they saw us on Facebook. But here's the deal, guys: if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast and you're not on a forum, then here's what you're missing out on. You can post up a question and you can be spoon-fed an answer right now on Facebook. But I'll tell you what, that's not going to benefit anybody else, right. And you're not going to have a dialogue with somebody that may just change your outlook on what you're working on. So, and I don't care if you go to our forum. I don't care where you go. Get involved in a forum community. Find one that you like. Use Facebook for posting pictures of your lunch, but if you've got technical questions or your weight loss or whatever it is that you want to share with the world, if you've got technical questions about your vehicle or you're building something and you want to show it off, your 15 minutes of fame on Facebook. Sorry, Daniel. Your 15 minutes of fame is only about 15 seconds on Facebook.
Right. And the thing I fuss with Facebook is your question doesn't last. It's down in the news feed somewhere else, and then it's 500 more people with the same silly thing. I think it's a great way to kind of connect with people after you've made friends on the forums.
Yep.
And I think
you can't search it. You can't, it's not archived. Right. You can't search it. It doesn't stick around for the next generation. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to get on there. If you ask me a question about something that was incredibly technical, we're going to have that discussion somewhere else, because I can guarantee you somebody else will have that question down the line, and I'd like them to benefit from it.
Sure.
So if you're a real enthusiast,
get on the indie forums. The indie forums.
That's right. Independent all the way. And if it's run by a guy in a suit and tie, just check in with him and see what he's built lately.
That's right. Well, Greg, we definitely appreciate you having on here. And once again, that's NICO Club. You love it, or your money back, basically.
That's right. But you get what you pay for.
Exactly.
And I'm looking forward to watching the rest of the podcasts, guys. And don't forget to let everybody that's watching this one know how they can catch the next one.
Oh, definitely. And hopefully I think we posted something on NICO, but I'm on I hate to say 100 different forums trying to promote this thing, so I don't get to spend the time I want to, but check out NICO, and if you've got that old Datsun, I'm sure they've got the answers for any problems you've got. You've got a new Infiniti, I'm sure they've got the answers there too. So what is that, nicoclub.com? Is that right?
Yes, sir. And then if you're a Datsun guy, you can get on DatsonForums.com. We could rattle through the rest of them, but you can find us from there. And Daniel, good luck finding a Datsun out there in Southern California, because I think I've bought all of them.
Well, you know what? I have a coworker that has a nice little truck, and I've been hounding him for about 6 months now. And finally, he said this weekend he said he was going to go out and buy some crazy Chevy Volt or something like that. So, and he told me he'd sell it to me for $500. I was willing to pay him like $1,500. So, yeah. So hopefully it's done by Monday. We'll see. Who knows?
We've got 10 subscribers, Dan. It could be one of them. Come on now.
Let me know how it goes, and if you have any questions, let me know. Matter of fact, I probably got some parts laying around here for you.
Hell yeah.
Sweet.
Well, guys, once again, that's NICO Club, and Greg, we definitely appreciate you having you on tonight.
Thank you guys for having me. This is a good time. We need to do this again sometime, and good luck with the rest of it, and we'll catch the next episode. I appreciate you guys. Keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Greg.
All right, that was the last part of our interview with Greg of NICO. We cannot wait to have him on again and talk some cars. It sounded like he had a lot of fun talking with us. And we hope you guys have really enjoyed this. This is what we're trying to do. We want to bring people like this that you've probably used their products or been on their forums or you like their aftermarket support. We want to get them on the show and talking to you. You can when people type on these forums, you kind of get a feel for what they are, and you can tell their personality a little bit. But it's awesome to hear them talk in person. You get a feel for the passion they have in the brand Nissan, Infiniti, Datsun, or whatever you're driving. So we want to push more and more into having these guys. We had hinted around with the last episode we're going to get El Presidente, Stephen Breslin, who's going to be on the show. We're going to talk all things Northeast Xterra. Maybe he's got some views on the rest of Nissan. The guy is super, super interesting. We had hinted around that he does a lot of TV production. You've probably seen some of the shows he's worked on. I know he does a lot with Food Network, I think it is, or Travel Channel. I've seen the credits and just my mind is somewhere else right now. I got dinner waiting on me, so that's probably where my mind is right now. We want to give a shout out once again to all you people listening. We really appreciate it. We've gotten some feedback, and it all seems to be pretty positive. This is a light take on the brand. We don't expect, you're not going to get some hard hitting news on this show. It's just a couple guys that like talking cars and give our little silly take on these things. So I want to tell everybody that we appreciate it. We love you. We hope to hear from you real soon. This is the Nissan Nation, and we are out. Peace! The Nissan Nation podcast is a presentation of DRB and KGB Media.